Subic Bay, once home to the largest overseas U.S. naval base during the Cold War, is again the center of international attention. In a move that has electrified defense watchers and rattled Beijing, the United States has deployed 15,000 elite troops, along with a fleet of helicopters, into Subic Bay, Philippines. The deployment comes at a time of escalating tensions in the South China Sea, raising questions about whether the region is inching closer to confrontation. For Washington, the arrival of such a powerful force signals a renewed commitment to its alliance with Manila and its strategy of maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific. For Beijing, however, the deployment represents an unmistakable challenge to its growing naval presence and territorial ambitions. And for the Philippines, caught between its historical ties with the U.S. and its geographical vulnerability to China, the move underscores both reassurance and risk. The arrival of 15,000 American troops in Subic Bay is not a routine exercise. These are not simply logistics personnel or observers. The force includes U.S. Marines, Special Operations Units, aviation brigades, and naval support elements, making it one of the largest American deployments to the Philippines in recent history. The deployment is reinforced by attack helicopters, transport helicopters, and support aircraft, giving the U.S. military not only boots on the ground, but also aerial mobility and firepower. The composition of forces suggests readiness for rapid operations, from amphibious landings to air assault missions and humanitarian responses. For Subic Bay itself, the scene is reminiscent of the Cold War days. American ships crowd the harbor, helicopters thunder across the skies, and thousands of U.S. soldiers move through bases and staging areas. For the local population, many of whom remember the decades of American presence before the base was closed in 1992, the return of large-scale U.S. deployments carries both nostalgia and unease. Beijing wasted no time reacting. Within hours of the U.S. announcement, the People's Liberation Army Navy began repositioning assets in the South China Sea. Intelligence reports indicate that Chinese destroyers, frigates, and Coast Guard vessels increased patrols near contested reefs and shoals, particularly around Scarborough Shoal, less than 200 kilometers from Subic Bay. Satellite imagery also showed Chinese maritime militia vessels massing in disputed waters, a tactic Beijing has used repeatedly to pressure the Philippines while maintaining deniability. At the same time, Chinese long-range bombers were spotted conducting flights over Hainan Island, signaling Beijing's willingness to escalate beyond naval shadowing. The plan's message was clear: China will not allow the U.S. to dominate its near seas uncontested. By increasing naval patrols and flying combat aircraft, Beijing signaled both readiness and defiance. Yet beneath the show of force lies concern. The sheer scale of 15,000 U.S. troops so close to Chinese-claimed waters represents a potential game-changer. For Manila, the return of large U.S. forces is both reassuring and politically sensitive. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. welcomed the deployment, framing it as part of the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement and necessary for national security. Filipino defense officials pointed out that the South China Sea situation has deteriorated in recent years, with Chinese ships blocking Filipino resupply missions to outposts and intimidating local fishermen. At the same time, critics within the Philippines warned that allowing such a massive U.S. presence could draw the country deeper into Washington's rivalry with Beijing. Business groups expressed concerns that China might retaliate economically, targeting trade, tourism, or investment. Yet public opinion surveys show growing frustration with China's aggressive behavior in Philippine waters. For many Filipinos, the arrival of U.S. troops is less about foreign meddling and more about restoring balance against a powerful neighbor. This deployment must be viewed within the broader Indo-Pacific strategy. The U.S. has been shifting resources and alliances toward Asia for over a decade. recognizing that the contest with China will define global security in the 21st century. Subic Bay is strategically located at the gateway to the South China Sea, only a short distance from Taiwan and critical maritime choke points. By placing 15,000 troops there, Washington gains a forward operating base, from which it can respond rapidly to crises, whether in the South China Sea, the Taiwan Strait, or even in humanitarian emergencies like typhoons. For China, the timing could not be worse. The deployment comes amid heightened tensions over Taiwan, clashes with the Philippines at sea, and growing defense ties among the US, Japan, Australia, and the Philippines. The presence of American forces in Subic Bay adds another layer of pressure to Beijing's already overstretched regional strategy. The implications go beyond the Philippines or even the South China Sea. The deployment signals a global shift back to forward basing and power projection. For decades after the Cold War, the US emphasized leaner deployments and rotational presence. Now, with 15,000 troops in Subic Bay, the model looks more like a return to Cold War-era garrisons. For Southeast Asia, the move underscores the hardening of regional security lines. Countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia will watch closely to see whether the Philippines benefits from enhanced protection or suffers from economic retaliation. For Japan and Australia, the deployment is a welcome sign of American resolve. For Beijing, however, the arrival of US forces at Subic Bay represents a direct challenge to its near seas strategy. China has spent years building artificial islands, militarizing reefs, and expanding naval patrols to dominate its maritime periphery. The US presence undermines that effort by creating a powerful allied base right at the doorstep of the South China Sea. The arrival of 15,000 US troops and helicopters in Subic Bay is not just a military maneuver, it is a geopolitical statement. It signals America's determination to maintain influence in the Indo-Pacific, reassure allies, and counter China's growing assertiveness. For Manila, it is a gamble, increased protection, but also heightened risks. For Beijing, it is a direct challenge to its ambitions. As the world watches, one thing is clear. Subic Bay is once again at the heart of global strategy. What do you think? Does the US deployment strengthen stability in the South China Sea? Or does it risk provoking greater conflict with China? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into global security and military developments.